Call this meeting to order. First item on the agenda is to approve the minutes. Has everybody had a chance to go over the minutes? And if so, is there any discussion? If there's no discussion, then I'll make the motion to approve the minutes.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. All in favor, please respond by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. The ayes have it. The ayes do have it. Madam Clerk,
Consent agenda items 1 through 13.
is there any discussion on the consent agenda? If there is no discussion on the consent agenda, then I'll make the motion to accept the consent agenda as it's presented.
Second.
Motion has been seconded by Vice Mayor Johnson. Is there further discussion? See none. With that, all in favor, please respond by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. The ayes have it. The ayes do have it. Madam Clerk.
Board of Bid and Contracts for Wichita Airport Authority Board of Bids and Contracts dated November 22nd, 2021.
Good morning and welcome.
Good morning, Melinda Walker, Department of Finance. First item for engineering is Wichita Distribution System, Sanitary Sewer and Paving to serve Cornejo Industrial Addition, Pearson Construction for an aggregate total of $2,577,704. For purchasing, we have a 58,000 GVWR dump truck. Recommend Omaha Truck Center for an aggregate total of $323,836. For telescoping steel sign post system, J&A Traffic Products, estimated annual is $47,482 per the itemized pricing. Concrete requirements, recommendation of Kansas Ready Mix, Group 1, $244,875. Cornejo and Sons for Group 2, $35,850. It's an annual contract with the itemized pricing. Mowing services for at ASR Wellfield, Travis Stuckey. Estimated annual is $87,245 with the itemized pricing attached. Airport installation of HVAC equipment in addition construction deferred to December 6th. In defense, gravimetric selection single unit, World Water Works, $149,865. An Avell Auto Vehicle Locator Equipment Warranty, Avell Technologies for $140,101. And this is our City of Wichita procurement website. Our open request for proposals and a recommendation to approve the bid award as recommended.
Thank you. Is there discussion or questions for staff? There is none. Is there discussion on the item? If there's no discussion on the item, then I will make the motion to accept staff's recommended action to receive and file the report, approve the contracts, and authorize the necessary signatures.
Second.
Motion has been seconded by Vice Mayor Johnson. All in favor of said motion, please respond by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. The ayes have it. The ayes do have it. Madam Clerk.
Council member appointments and comments.
At this point, do we have any appointments that anyone would like to make? Councilmember Bluebog.
Thank you, Mayor. I do have one appointment. I need to remove Laura Rainwater from the Ethics Advisory Board as she had a conflict of interest since she's on the Executive Board of Directors for REAP. I wanted to appoint former Judge Clark Owens in her place. I did need to run something by council because he is no longer an elected, but because of the backlog of COVID, he does go in and hear cases routinely. So is that all I needed to say there?
I think the question is whether or not that is a public office under the ethics policy. We don't define public office under the ethics policy. So I think the council could waive any issue regarding whether or not Judge Owens is still serving in a public office, or the council could agree that a limited pro tem judge's position is not a public office for the purposes of the ordinance or policy.
I really thought his subject matter expertise would be really good on the board.
Could we, and just throwing this out there, if that's a question that we want to look into, could we do the appointment next meeting and give us a chance to further review that?
Yeah.
Would you be all right with that? Okay,
7th.
yeah. And that, yeah, I doubt we'll have any action between now and 2 weeks that would require this committee, so, yeah, if you don't mind, that would be great, but, very good. Other appointments at this time? All right, comments? Pardon? Councilmember Cirillo.
Thank you, Mayor. I saw your tweet over the last couple of days about a trip to Washington DC and the White House. Thought that was obviously a great and productive trip, as you had mentioned. I'm a bit concerned, though, about any discussion ahead of time that happened with other council members. I've talked myself with some other council members, and nobody seems to have known that this trip was coming up. So I found out very early on in my short tenure on the council and my appointed tenure that official travel from this council had to be approved by the council. And with discussions that I've had with staff, there has been no official approval by this body for that official travel on behalf of the city. So just wanted to inquire of you about this trip and find out more.
Well, it was an official travel on behalf of the city of Wichita.
Okay. According to your tweet, that doesn't seem to be the case. You are acting on behalf of the city of Wichita, according to your tweet.
My
Yeah.
trips to the White House with this particular organization predates my tenure as mayor.
Okay, but you talk about a productive trip on behalf of local and state electeds.
Right.
So,
Not this body, though.
I mean, you talked about it on the radio as well. It certainly appears that you are acting on behalf of this city and this body. I'd like to know who paid for the trip.
Well, I guess what would make you believe that I was acting on behalf of my official capacity of mayor?
You tweeted about it, you talked about it on the radio in
Well, I mean,
in
I'm
a
also
long interview.
going to tweet that I'm going to Austin to visit my brother, probably
Well, I
over the
don't
next few
think
days.
anyone would argue that going to Austin to visit your brother would be an official trip on the capacity of the city of Wichita. So
Well, that's what I'm saying.
I would just like to find out who paid for the trip and find out more about this what appears to be a wonderful and productive trip, in your words, on behalf of the city of Wichita.
Well, I can tell you the city did not pay for the trip because it was not an official trip. And for someone who's new to politics, new to government, one of the ways
Okay,
to
my
tell...
tenure
Excuse me,
as on
I
this-
have the floor right now.
No, my tenure on this council has nothing to do.
I have the floor right now. I'm going to answer your question, and then it's your turn. So, for those who are wondering what's official and what isn't, looking to see who pays for it is part of that. And obviously, the city didn't pay for it because, well, it's not an official trip.
So you weren't as in your words, you weren't acting on behalf of state and local electeds. That's your words in your
Why don't you go ahead and read the tweet? Read out loud for all of us.
I did read the tweet.
No, just
the
read
tweet.
it out loud, the whole thing.
Flying back to Wichita after a productive trip to D.C., thank you to the White House for hosting a delegation of local and state electeds for an update about the new infrastructure law.
Okay. And so
you're-
your argument is that because other local and state electeds were present from all over the country, that made it a official trip in my capacity as mayor?
Absolutely.
Even
Absolutely.
though As you mentioned, you don't know who paid for it, so you know that the city didn't pay for it because we didn't vote for
Well,
that.
you just told us that the city didn't pay for it. You've admitted that. Thank you. I appreciate that.
But you've admitted that we didn't vote for a payment for that, so you know it's not an official trip, or else we would have voted for a payment, we would have voted to be on the trip.
I'm just
And now
saying.
you're asking is it an official trip because other legislators were there?
I'm just saying that you said you were acting on behalf of local and state electeds.
That's not what that says. I'm not acting on
I'm
behalf
not
of
saying this
anyone.
was a bad trip at all. I'm saying, hey, more power to you if you were invited to the White House. That's great for the city of Wichita. I would just expect something that this big would have been discussed with other council members and this body beforehand.
Why?
I'd like to hear, I guess, what other council members think about this.
So,
Yeah.
Go ahead.
if I may, it has been tradition and policy, I believe, in the 6 years I've been on council, whenever any of us travel for any kind of council-related business, it's always been approved by this body. I have had trips that I've gone on that other industries or other groups have paid for, and that's been disclosed. It's always been about transparency and making sure people understand as our capacity as electeds, where we go and what we do. When I saw the tweet and the nameplate says Mayor Brandon Whipple, it says to me, you're there on city business. And so I don't understand the hesitation on why you're not wanting to reveal more details. Again, as Councilmember Cirillo says,
So,
anytime, I'm not finished, anytime an elected body from Wichita gets invited to the White House, that should be celebrated. And, you know, let our community know that that opportunity exists, no matter who's in the White House. And so, again, the fact that you got invited, that's fantastic. It's good for Wichita. We've had good relations with DC, not only the agencies, but also the electeds. And so, again, holding that up, that's great for Wichita. So I think the council members' questions are fair.
so I'm just
Deserve an
confused
answer.
though. This body acknowledges that there was no taxpayer money from this body to go to pay for my trip to a private organization I'm a part of and have been for about a decade. We acknowledge that, right? We also acknowledge that I was never sent to this with a mission or a task for the city of Wichita. Are we on the same page on that? And no one said, hey, go to
No,
Washington.
we don't
do this.
know that.
I'm not on the same page. What private
Did-
body were you acting on? Because your tweet doesn't say anything about that. Your interview on the radio didn't say anything about that.
So, but you acknowledge that we haven't been, this body didn't send me forth to
I
represent
want
the
you
city.
to answer the question that I just asked
Well,
regarding what you
let's
just
establish the
said.
facts first.
What private body are you acting on behalf of then?
Okay, so if you look at the tweet, it tags the private body. It's called the New Deal. Just click on that, and it will bring you to the website. So, let's establish the facts. This is an organization I've been a part of for almost a decade. It is a policy organization, and I was sent there not by anyone in this room. No one in this room knew, as I've already been established, because no one sent me there to accomplish anything on behalf of the city of Wichita. The city of Wichita, I have not sought any type of reimbursement or payment on behalf of the city of Wichita. This is something I went to after I was elected, but not sworn in, before I served the city of Wichita. I did the same trip, similar tweet about 2 years ago from that, and which suggests that this is not something that my position as a official of the city of Wichita has brought me to do. And I understand the interpretation, like, well, you were there, and you are the mayor, so you must have been there on behalf of the city of Wichita. My question is, where is it where we go to different events that electeds are supposed to go to? Where's the line between going to one of those events and going on behalf of the city of Wichita? Because I'm arguing that no business, official business on behalf of the city of Wichita was conducted on this trip. Instead, this was a educational trip for me as an elected that I do nearly every year. That well predates my time here in the city of Wichita. And therefore, the interpretation I think that I have, and I think most folks would as well, is this is a extracurricular trip in addition to what I do as mayor. So what I want to know is there something I'm missing that separates this educational trip and networking trip for myself personally as someone who works in this area that makes you believe that, no, this is actually a trip on behalf of the city of Wichita? And as city business was, I guess, furthered by this trip. And if so, what is that and what am I missing?
So a question in response to what you just said. So therefore, as you're acting in your capacity as a member of this separate organization, does that mean you plan to go for federal infrastructure dollars for this separate organization rather than the city of Wichita?
So any further education on the newly passed infrastructure bill, I would argue, is not the same as going through that educational organization to pursue money on behalf of the city of Wichita. Is that your question?
I'm sorry, I don't buy that argument. I don't think many people do.
So you think
I don't
educational
think that's
institutions?
reasonable. I don't think that's a reasonable argument, quite frankly.
Oh, well, tell me how it's reasonable then.
I don't
So
know.
follow
I think
me
the
through this.
reasonable argument, I think the reasonable thing to do would have been to discuss this ahead of time with your fellow board members acting on behalf of this city.
So, but that's the key right there. I'm not acting on behalf of the city to get further
You were.
education.
You were acting on behalf of the city. You got away from it by paying for it for yourself. I get that. But clearly,
So how was
this
I
is
acting on
something
behalf
that
of the
affects our
city?
entire city, and you had no business whatsoever talking with any other council members about it. And I take offense to that, and this city should take offense to that.
No,
That's all I have.
I'm sure you do take offense to
I do.
whatever you
I do.
believe you could throw at me. But I am interested to know, maybe our legal department could tell me, is taking a trip to learn?
You've already established that you paid for the trip. There's no argument about this.
Well, except for your argument. So let's go
I'm
ahead-
just arguing, why didn't you discuss with this fellow body ahead of time about this great and productive trip that you had to the White House? I think that's a fair and honest question. And I've asked it at least 3 times now, and you haven't answered. So that's all I have. I think I've proven my argument, and we can move on.
But I'm going to go ahead and dismantle your argument. Legal, can you tell us what would constitute a trip on behalf of the city of Wichita that would require a vote from this body? And would an educational trip that is privately funded count as official duties of mayor?
I'm not going to have enough information to answer that question. That's going to be a factual determination as to whether or not the individual that took the trip represented the city. I don't have that fact. The only ordinance that would apply here, well, actually, there's 2. One is, did we pay for it? We all agree we did not. And the second one is representations made by you or another council member as being the policy of the city and whether those were approved. And again, I don't have enough facts to answer that information.
So you're going to make an argument off a tweet you found? That's not factual enough for you to make an argument, is what legal says.
A
But
constituent just texted me a further picture that says your nameplate on the desk says Mayor Brandon Whipple. You were acting in the capacity of this city. You were. So why didn't you talk about it?
Well, legal, can you
Or-
sanction that statement? If I'm called the mayor, does that mean I am automatically acting automatically acting as a representation of this city to the capacity that we would need prior approval for me to travel?
I'm sorry.
According to the council member, because my title of mayor was used on a nameplate, I therefore am now acting on behalf of the city and in violation of the ordinance. Would you agree with that?
And again, that's a factual determination as to, and I understand that any council member could appear at a dog judging contest. And it could say mayor, it could say Councilman Fry. And I think you have to look at the topic and what was happening. And again, I don't know that I have enough information.
So a name
to make
tag
that-
wouldn't be enough for you to sanction or confirm the statement of the council member?
No, again, it has to look at what are you doing? I mean, if you're Mayor Whipple and you're judging a dog costume party, no, you probably weren't acting as mayor, you were judging a dog contest. So again, it deals with the policy and the purpose of the trip. There is not a specific ordinance, other than if there's an expenditure that would require that type of disclosure. And I'm not gonna get into the policy because that changes occasionally with council members.
Further, State Representative from Connecticut, C. McCarthy Vahey, responded to your tweet saying, quote, "Fortunate to have the opportunity to learn about the ways that you are supporting all members of your community, Mayor. Keep up the good work." Did you dispute the State Representative from Connecticut's response that you weren't actually acting on behalf of the citizens of Wichita?
What makes you think her response is insinuating that during this trip I was acting my official capacity as mayor on behalf of the city of Wichita?
She apparently did.
Well, she said
She
constituents,
clearly
right?
said you're helping to support the members of your community.
So I always help support the members of my community.
That's great. I do too. I would
Do I
expect
need-
every person on this council to support the members of their community, and I would expect every member of this council to be fully transparent on how they are acting in support of the members of this community. I think I've proven my point. We can move on.
I don't think you have.
Thanks.
So further, is representing constituents or being interpreted as representing members of your community something that I would have to have pre-approval with the council before I'm able to do?
And again, you're talking about specific facts. Certainly, if you are at an event in the city representing the city as a whole, we do send notifications out for those kind of events. That's a PR issue. So you're really talking about a number of different issues here, whether it's a council policy, whether it's a PR issue, whether it's a legal issue. I don't think those are legal issues.
So you don't think these are legal issues?
I said they're not a legal issue, as long as there wasn't money utilized for the trip. There may be other issues that is not within my purview to comment on.
Well, given the evidence as presented by Cirillo, which is 2 tweets.
It's Council Member Cirillo. Thank you.
Councilmember Cirillo, it's 2 tweets. He has jumped to the conclusion that I am in
I
violation.
haven't jumped to any conclusions,
That I am in
Mayor.
violation of
I have
the
not
ordinance,
jumped
and
to
I just
any conclusions.
want legal's opinion.
I have not said that you were in violation of any ordinance.
Then
I
what-
simply asked
What is
who
the
paid
charge
for
so we
it.
can ask legal if they agree?
I simply asked who paid for it and why you didn't feel it was important to discuss this with the community and your fellow board members ahead of time. That's all I asked. You answered one question, you still haven't answered the second. So, and I don't think you are, so.
Well, to be honest, all
again,
right, I'll answer it. So we just established that there is no rules that have been violated, at least not from our legal counsel's perspective at this point. I don't ask permission to travel.
I'm not talking about asking
Particularly
permission.
for the
You're changing the
council.
subject again.
No, I'm going to answer your question. Further, I don't advertise I'm out of town because the multitude of death threats and threats of violence to my family that I have been receiving since I took this position. In fact, if you look in Google, my house is on a Google map of a place of interest, which means that anybody in my area or in this area who wants to know where I live can find my family, my wife and my kids, pretty easily. So sadly, because of really, I think, salacious politics of the last year in a climate we're in, I can't advertise when I'm out of town. I can send a tweet when I'm coming back, but I don't tell people from the bench, hey, I'm going to be leaving for a few days to go on this educational trip that I take every year when I can. Because frankly, I don't want people to know when my wife and my 3 little kids are home alone. And I don't expect you or anyone in this board to try to advertise when you're away, because everyone on this board, I think, has actually received some negative pushback over the last couple of years. And if you feel your safety is in jeopardy, or your house's safety, or your family's, then that's your call. That's not a call that I think any of us need to make. So if you want to know why I didn't tweet out before that I was on my way, that's why. And if you want to know if this is a violation of any, I guess, ordinance, legal has told us she, based off the evidence you presented, it's not. So unless you got further questions.
That's not really what she said, but anyway.
Legal, do you believe off the evidence that was presented for Sorello that I should have asked?
Councilmember Sorello, thank
Councilmember
you.
Sorello, that I should have asked for a vote to go on this trip?
And again, that's not a legal question. There is not a ordinance violation regarding what occurred.
So it's not a violation of an ordinance violation in regards to what has occurred? Okay. Glad we got that cleared up. Councilmember Claycomb.
Thank you.
Is it on?
I just want to say that I agree with Councilmember Cirillo's questioning, and I think this sets a bad precedent because the rest of us have always reported and got approval before we traveled, even on White House trips. I've been invited to one of those before, too. Former Mayor Longwell was invited to those on several occasions. Again, even if the city didn't pay for it, it just sets a bad precedence in terms of transparency. So.
You good for me?
Go for it.
Okay, thank you. First of all, none of us deserve death threats for a position that we volunteered to do. So I have sympathy for you on that. Mayor Longwell had death threats as well. It's a very real part of the world we live in today, and none of us deserve that. So my sympathy to you and your family. And again, I don't think any of us are saying that you broke an ordinance or a law. I think we're just asking for greater transparency. That has been a focal point of yours for the last 2 years, and we've created an ethics board. And we're saying that if we're going to do this the right way, we should all live by the same rules. We have all voted on travel for different things over the several years that we've been on council. And so I ask, would you have been invited to this meeting were you not the mayor?
Yes.
Find that hard to believe, but that's fine.
Well, I'm sorry if you find it hard to believe. I've been a member of this group for almost 10 years. If I'm no longer elected or not elected mayor, I'm still able to be a part of this group.
So then there should be no reason you have hesitation on saying what's going on and who funded it and going and answering the questions ahead of time. That would have been a lot easier than what we've been doing today.
So wait a minute, wait. We established the city didn't pay for it, which means I paid for it. Or the organization, I think, will reimburse my flight. Is that the transparency that you seek, to know if I'm paying for it or if the city's paying for it? 'Cause I
The
thought we were established.
transparency is taking a trip, acting as mayor, and letting us know about it.
Have we
as a body.
established I'm not acting as mayor on
We
this
have
trip?
not.
So I just
It's
told you.
very clear, you were acting as mayor. When you see the nameplate that says Mayor Brandon Whipple,
So being mayor and acting as mayor are two separate things. I am the mayor when I'm not acting in my official capacity, because people will come up to me as mayor. So if I go somewhere, like I did actually, it's a funny example that was presented by legal, I did actually judge a dog contest.
this wasn't a dog contest,
No,
this
you're
was
right,
the
you're
White
right.
House.
You're right. I judged a dog contest, and my nameplate said mayor. So my official capacity, that was obviously not the official capacity of mayor. Part of my duties, as described in our ordinance, to judge a dog contest, but they still recognize me as mayor
And it
because
was-
I'm elected by the people
And it was
as
publicly
mayor.
available on council calendar that you were doing that. So the public knew that. Public didn't know about this.
This is on my calendar.
Okay. How
No,
come
this is
none
on
of
my
us-
public calendar.
None of us knew about it.
Well,
It's
go
okay.
ahead.
I'm done.
I just want to say, I've served with 2 other mayors, and both Mayor Brewer and both Mayor Longwell had trips that weren't paid for by the city. They'd be paid for by the Kaufman organization or somebody else. And they always went on the agenda, or they always announced at the meeting where they were going and what the purpose of the trip was. And a lot of times I think they'd even say, there's no binding action for the city or anything like that. So just saying historically what we've done.
And again, I hesitate to announce, especially since I'm not acting in my official capacity of mayor at one of these. I am not seeking funds for the city. This is an educational trip where I'm learning about policy that makes me a better mayor in the end. But again, this is not, the city was not approached. I was in this group far before I was a mayor. And again, I don't, because of all that, the mountain of evidence that shows like this was not a city-sponsored trip. And in the future, I don't mind the city paying for me to go on something like this. I thought this would be separate. I still have a reservation when it comes to announcing to the world that I won't be home for the next few days, given the past year that I had, people protesting at my house, the DA pressing charges against someone who had a plot to kidnap and kill me, plus the other generalized threats of violence that I think most of us have seen as well. So I am cautious of, I guess, talking too much about if I'm going to be out of town or not, particularly if it is established that it is not for city business. So if you disagree, fine. I'm just asking for a little understanding on why something outside of what is the requirements, both ethically with our ethics standards and with our ordinance, a trip that is not in violation of any of that, why I don't just tell you beforehand that I'm leaving. And if the argument is, well, you're not being transparent, well, I tweeted about it and talked about it after I came back, so it's not like I'm trying to hide it. I just didn't go through additional process that wasn't required because, again, I have pretty good reason to not go through that additional unrequired process to announce to the world that my wife and my 3 little kids are going to be home by themselves. So if you don't agree with that, fine. But I'm hoping we can at least get an understanding of why that is.
So no more travel gets approved at council level then because of that fear? Is that what you're saying?
No, if the council travel is one in which it should be approved, then okay. So far, it has not been at all established that this is travel that should have been approved because, as has been established during this discussion, this was not travel on behalf of the city of Wichita. This was me going to an event that I have gone to for 7 years before I was mayor. If the argument is who printed out what on the nameplate, fine, we have to revisit the ordinance to discuss, well, if they call you mayor, does that mean that you're officially in your capacity as mayor, or you're not? I think official capacity as mayor means the city sent you there to get business done. I don't think that me taking a class on some of the policy counts as that, because, well, frankly, the ordinance doesn't say it does.
So based on your reasoning then, we did approve travel for you about a month ago to Las Vegas, I believe?
No.
No.
Where was it? I can't remember. We approved travel for you about a month ago.
LKM Topeka, we were both at the same conference.
Did you express these concerns and beforehand? I didn't hear any of these concerns about you and your family's safety before that. Did you order an extra watch by the police department at your house while you were gone because of your concerns?
It was Topeka, right? We were at, Brian?
Yes, LKM.
But we announced that you would be gone and you were traveling and you would be out of town.
Yeah, I don't find the same risk
Okay.
if I'm gone for less than 24 hours.
Understood.
Okay. Councilmember Johnson,
Thanks, Mayor. Different
or Vice
subject.
Mayor Johnson, sorry.
Different subject. I didn't know if we were done, but I just wanted to say, last year I encouraged everybody to have a virtual Thanksgiving, and I'm glad the vaccine is available. And hopefully, we can have some friendly get-togethers on Thursday, safe. And if you have not got your vaccine, please get vaccinated.
Good suggestion.
All right, so we actually have a blue sheet. So we could adjourn or recess, do the council workshop, and then come back out of recess into the blue sheet, with the 20-minute for executive session, which I think is probably the easiest way. Or we could do the blue sheet now, then adjourn the meeting, be completely done with the meeting, and then do the workshop after. So is there any real feedback on that? Councilmember Tuttle.
And Bob can elaborate, but our friends who are joining us for the workshop have to be done by 11:15 max. So I would prefer that we do the workshop and then come back for executive session. Bob, is that?
Right, that was the same thing I was going to say. Yes,
Perfect.
We have a little
I
bit.
think like Bob sometimes, and that's like really.
Okay, so then that's how we will proceed. So we are in recess for the workshop, and then once the workshop's over, we will immediately resume the meeting. Representative, welcome.
Mayor, if I could do an intro real quickly.
Of course.
Earlier this year, we experienced the closing of 2 grocery stores in areas that, in portions of the community that created food deserts or exacerbated food desert or food insecurity problems in those areas. And there was a discussion about moving forward, what do we do to fill that void, but also then further discussion about how do we evaluate proposals as they come forward, not just for these 2 specific areas in the city, but really for the entire 44 square miles of food deserts that are in the city of Wichita. We were also approached by 2 entities that had proposals and were asking for some kind of city assistance in order to be able to move forward. We reached out to Eileen Horn with New Venture Advisors, who helped put together the master food plan, and said, could you help us develop an evaluation process so that the council can review these proposals as they come forward. We have a set of established criteria and can determine what the most effective way would be for us to participate in solutions going forward, and also to review best practices and come back with some ideas that maybe would be tailor-made for Wichita. Eileen and the team at New Venture have put together a presentation for you and some recommendations, and these are above and beyond what's in the master food plan. And so with that, I'd like to turn it over to Eileen, unless Vice Mayor Johnson or Councilmember Tuttle want to add to the intro, because both of them have been actively involved in this issue.
I'm not going to pass up the opportunity to make a comment. Thank you. I just want to say that we know that the master food plan's been something that we're all interested in, and hopefully we'll see come to fruition by the end of the year. And as Bob mentioned, when we had organizations that reached out and said, hey, we'd like to be funded, our immediate response in the city of Wichita is we need to make sure that we're careful and calculated and transparent. And so that was really the genesis for this work. And we'll explain a little bit and, have everybody be able to ask questions. But I'm just really proud and excited to be a part of this process. I think that it will really codify this so that we can have the best outcomes that are sustainable for the community as we move forward to address food deserts in Wichita.
One last thing is, I think you'll also hear a discussion about the impact that COVID has had on food insecurity, which helps us better understand the severity of the issue. With that, I'll turn it over to the New Venture team.
Very good. Good morning, Mayor Whipple, Manager Layton, council members. I am Kathy Nyquist. I'm the founder and principal of New Venture Advisors. Thank you for the invitation to be a part of the workshop this morning and to share the healthy food access and grocery proposal analysis that is completed by the team. I'm joined by Eileen Horn, who you know, and Melissa Hamilton, who led the work and will present its conclusions today. Eileen is going to run slides, so you can move ahead one. New Venture Advisors is a consultancy. We focus on food system planning and development. We help our clients address food access issues, hunger alleviation, health equity disparities, and economic development opportunities. And we do it through creative food system solutions that range from new policies to new businesses and food infrastructure development. And you can see on the next slide that we work all over the United States, but have an extensive portfolio in the state of Kansas. We've been working there almost our entire 10-year existence. And over the course of time, we've helped to build food hubs. We've helped to support rural grocery stores. And we've also helped to develop food system plans, to name a few projects. And in the fall of 2021, just a few months ago, the city contracted with us to evaluate potential solutions to the food access challenges that are facing Wichita's neighborhoods. And this was spurred by recent grocery closures. And the city asked us to provide a report that summarized these challenges that are currently facing the city, to analyze 2 business plans that were presented to address these closures. And also to look at best practices from peer cities and to make some recommendations for you to consider. And that's why we're here today. So I'll turn it over to Eileen and Melissa to share the findings with you. Thank you again for the time this morning.
Thanks, Kathy. So when we go through the presentation today, we're going to go through the 4 sections of the report that you can see on this first slide. So we'll review the issue of access to healthy food in Wichita. Melissa will take you through the analysis of the 2 proposals that you all received to address food deserts in the city. I'm going to give a review of some case studies of food access innovations in some peer cities that we thought could be really applicable to the city. And then we're going to make some recommendations for you all to consider. So let's dive in. As you all know, access to food and grocery is not a new topic. You all have been talking about it for almost a decade. I just want to make sure we're all on the same page when we talk about the term food desert. That term has been around for about 10 years and has, had different critiques over time. But at its core, the definition of a food desert is a census tract that is categorized as both low income and low access to grocery. So to qualify as a low access census tract, a significant number of the population in an urban area has to be greater than 1 mile from the nearest supermarket, or in rural areas greater than 10 miles from a supermarket. You all are familiar with this study the Health and Wellness Coalition in 2013 commissioned. The results of this were incredibly eye-opening. At the time, found that 44 square miles of Wichita were considered food deserts and that there were wide price disparities. So some of the most affluent Wichita zip codes actually had the lowest food prices, and some of the lowest income zip codes were experiencing really high food prices. So you all are aware of this. We talked about it in the food plan, but I just wanted to bring it up again because it was really well done and I think laid a foundation for this discussion in your community. So what we did at NVA is we updated the information. Unfortunately, some of the most recent data we could find for low income and low access maps through USDA, the most recent data was 2015, so those need to be updated, obviously. But between 2010 and 2015, the number of Wichita residents living in low-income census tracts with low access to grocery increased by 12.4%. So that means 135,000 Wichitans have low access to healthy food options, and of those, 52,000 are both low access and low income. And as Bob pointed out, we all know that the pandemic has illuminated a lot of deficiencies in our food system, and we're still feeling a lot of the shocks from the supply chain issues, as you well know, as you go to the grocery store and see the inflation of food costs. But we also know that the pandemic had huge impacts on food insecurity in all of our communities. Feeding America, which is the national network that coordinates food banks across the nation, is projecting a 2021 overall food insecurity rate for Wichita at 14.6%. So it's up almost 2 percentage or over 2 percentage points since pre-pandemic 2019 numbers. And the projected childhood food insecurity rate for 2021 is 21.9%. So also up from pre-pandemic levels. So the main point here is the issue persists, and it's, I think, really worthy of your consideration, and we're happy to be part of presenting some solutions today. So I'm going to just remind you of a couple quick maps and then that you all have seen before. Just remind you that those are in the report, and then hand it over to Melissa. So this map, you all were provided as part of the food planning process, but I just want to remind you that the orange diagonal represent the census tracts that qualify as food deserts, so they are low income and low access. And then the planning department folks who helped us with this map also did an overlay of the city council districts and the county commission districts, because the food plan was both a joint city-county plan. And what we really wanted to show with this map, it's a widespread issue. It is throughout the city, so not concentrated in any one particular neighborhood or district. In addition, what's important to consider when it comes to food deserts is that you could live in a neighborhood that technically isn't a food desert, but if you don't have access to a vehicle, you personally may be in a food desert, right? You do not have access to a store. So you could live in one of these census tracts that is showing up as, oh, you have a grocery store half a mile from you, but if you don't have a way to get there, you don't have access to food. So we also looked at the percent of households with no vehicle available, and as you can see, there is significant overlap with food deserts and also households that lack access to vehicles. And then, another issue that you all have spoken about, I know in previous meetings and received memos about, is that as supermarkets leave cities and as we see grocery closures, what fills that gap are often dollar stores. So as you can see on this map, your planning department mapped the Dollar Generals, the Dollar Trees, and the Family Dollars. And so the reason this is problematic is you all have been in those stores, you know that the majority of the food that they sell tends to be packaged or processed foods. They don't often have access to dairy or produce or any of the other food categories that create a well-balanced diet. And so it's a multi-layered issue, and we wanted to share these maps again and remind you that, I think I said this in the report, the solution is not going to be a silver bullet, it's going to be silver buckshot, because there are multiple factors at play that are influencing the access to healthy food challenges facing Wichita. So with that, I'm going to kick it to Melissa, and she's going to walk you through the part of the report where we looked at the two proposals that the city received and tried to help you make a decision about which of those to consider.
All right. Thanks, Eileen, and great to be here, everyone. So when we worked with you on this, we were able to review a couple of key proposals. And so there were specifically two. One was Common Ground Producers and Growers, and the second one was District Run Grocery. I'll go into just a little bit of detail about both, so we're all kind of anchored on the same, kind of set of facts, and you get a lens into what we were considering upon our review. So Common Ground Producers and Growers was a mobile-only, produce-only concept. Came to us through a proposal that was generated by an operator who is experienced and had a very entrepreneurial family and background. I think some of the things that were mentioned by Eileen earlier around barriers to access to public transportation vehicle proximity, and even proximity to potential competitors are lower under this model, given its mobile first concept. So again, think about the footprint, which was acquired is smaller. There would be some need for networks, right, for distribution and partnerships to continue to scale out to serve more and more communities. I think another thing that was really surfaced for this is that we thought about the funding ratios of what's really going back into the community versus what's being spent more for funding. And then also thought about, kind of the personnel and other things that would be needed to really execute this from a staffing perspective. In converse, we also looked at the District 1 grocery, which is more of a bodega type model. Came to us from an entrepreneur with some adjacent experience running a convenience store concept. And so I think a difference here is that while Common Grounds and Producers and Growers was really produce only, this was, I'd say, produce plus. So it would kind of expand beyond other food products, including meats and poultry and canned goods, and as well as fresh fruits and dairies. There are, considering where this potentially could be located, there are a couple of competitors with offerings that are in a nearby proximity. I do think for this one, there are, given it's kind of brick and mortar, right? So without the mobile first, there are still expansion opportunities. If you think about what other services could be housed within this bodega concept, or how you could expand and scale, that is on the table. So those are just, you think about some of the other things too, as well as like access, consumer access to public transportation, and what else, you think about in terms of like a fixed, more brick and mortar model. Those are some things to think about. So how do we really provide an objective view to really analyze both proposals side by side? As you can see, there was a big, I'd say, difference in, the mobile first concept versus other key concepts. I would say we looked at the key evaluation categories here and gave them a certain weight to really make sure that we were evaluating each across category that would be really germane to sound decision making. So location was important, right? So you think about mobile first versus a concept that's a brick and mortar. What are some of the pricing strategies that could be employed with either model? What services could be offered? Is there room for expansion? Another thing that came up as important is operator background and vision, right? So who's kind of at the helm? Who's going to run this? What's the team look like? How are they going to think about running the operations? Scalability, right? So, sound models have that potential to really scale out and build and, become even more impactful. With all models, there's some element of uncertainty and risk, and potentially some trade-offs in terms of speed. So that was also considered. Analogs, proof point concepts. So are there others in the area or others in the space that are doing something similar? Have they been successful or not with similar concepts? Proposed project budget, which, was equally weighted with location. Kind of what did, if you peel back things, what did the numbers really look like? What is it going to take to operate? How is this going to, be able to support scale? And I think last but certainly not least, we looked at a couple of other key performance indicators to really help to guide whether or not these could have the right traction and impact that would be needed. So we ran both of the concepts through the model and through the scoring methodology that was on that previous slide. And so out of 100 points, Common Ground surfaced as with 69 out of 100. The District 1 community grocery store was next with 55 out of 100. I think, if you think about these kind of side by side, Common Ground really had the most potential to provide a replicable, scalable model to really address some of the food access issues that are important to Wichita. And I think that was basically due to, right, the mobile first concept and the ability to really build that out. Now, from a scoring perspective, right, so we have 69 and 55. So you might be wondering, why those scores were given and how could we think through potential for closing some gaps. And so I will say that the scores ended up lower because there are some additional gaps. I think that we made recommendations to do additional diligence for. And so I think the punchline is neither proposal really provided a really comprehensive solution. I think there were elements within each proposal that could lend itself to something with potential with additional diligence. So how did we really develop tools and processes to really do this objective level of analysis? I think first was this operator evaluator rubric. So a couple slides before, we talked through some of the key criteria that was used to assess each proposal. And so again, this was really objective. There was a scoring model behind it. So it really helped compare apples to apples across the two different various proposals. One thing I think for this rubric is that it can allow, as you get additional proposals in, you can run all those proposals through the same rubric and the same model and continue to kind of stack proposals against each other and really see where some of the nuances are and understand which model or models can kind of address most of the needs. Based upon the review of the initial proposals, again, there's an opportunity to do a little bit of additional diligence specific to questions. And so what we did is we took the approach of running each proposal through the scoring model. And then for areas that we wanted to go a little bit deeper on, we outlined a list of key questions that we thought would be really important to ask back. So there's that level of additional analysis that was performed to really hone in on which areas we think would warrant more diligence to go a little bit deeper. And I'd say, information gaps, right, wanted to ensure that those could be closed, and then that we could ensure that there's a right fit holistically, specifically for operators.
Great, thanks, Melissa. So in addition to analyzing those two proposals, we also provided some case studies from peer cities. Our initial list that's in your report, as you'll see, included 9 cities that we looked at for food access innovations. And we narrowed it down to these 4. You can see the particular programs in bold that we analyzed to look at them and see what are some lessons learned, what are some potential solutions that could be adapted for the city of Wichita. And those 4 case studies are included in your report. I'm just going to do a quick overview and kind of give you the highlights. They all look like this. So we looked at the key takeaways for the particular policy or program. We did a call out box about the city's role. So how did the city support this, either directly or in partnership? There's a little blurb about how it works, and then if we could find any research about whether it's actually working, whether it's actually increasing access to healthy food and changing people's buying and eating habits, then that was also called out in that section. So just a quick overview, really, Minneapolis's staple food ordinance it was one of the groundbreaking policies to try to look at this issue of increasing access to healthy foods within urban neighborhoods. It's the first of its kind, but not a lot of cities have followed suit. And I think one of the challenges, as I read it and through reviewing the research, is that it's pretty onerous. The implementation is a challenge because it requires monitoring by the health department to ensure that all of the convenience stores and grocery stores and everyone is stocking this list of staple foods. And so compliance has been difficult. So it was, I think, an interesting one to call out because it was the first of its kind, but it didn't end up being what we would recommend for the city of Wichita. The second case study that we highlighted was the Philadelphia Healthy Corner Store Initiative, and as if you've read the recommendations, you know that this is one that we do think could be a good fit for the city of Wichita. The reason that this one has been so successful, it's had a significant amount of city support from the health department. And what the city does to support convenience stores and corner stores stocking and marketing healthy items is that they actually participate in training with store managers. They help them market with healthy eating messages. They host educational programs within stores. They offer mini grants for refrigeration and produce coolers to make it as easy as possible for stores to increase the healthy foods that they sell. I think what's really innovative about this and why it has been replicated by so many cities is that it's a partnership with small businesses rather than a regulation or an ordinance. And I think because it has been seen as that kind of partnership, it has been successful. There's a link to the evaluation if you want to see further. The Food Trust has done significant research into how this is changing people's behaviors and eating habits, and also they looked at property values in neighborhoods and saw an increase in property values if they had a fresh corner store nearby. We also looked at the Baltimore Balta-Market virtual supermarket program. This is the first online grocery store pilot in a major U.S. city where the city partnered with a grocery store to facilitate online shopping, and then used city community centers, grocery stores, rec centers as the pickup locations. It thus far has been pretty successful. I think they have 16 community sites at this point. And really, this is about addressing transportation barriers primarily. The majority of the participants were low-income seniors who couldn't get to grocery stores, and so this allowed it to be brought directly into their neighborhood. So I think this is a really great innovative model. Also, we just didn't recommend it directly for the city of Wichita because there was uncertainty about who that grocer would be and how that relationship would go, but I think this one is also worthy of consideration. And then finally, the last case study we looked at, you're all, I believe, familiar with this as it was presented to you in a memo by the planning department also. But in 2018, the city of Tulsa adopted an ordinance that created a healthy neighborhood overlay district in a North Tulsa neighborhood to basically exclude dollar stores and stores that aren't providing access to healthy food. They did a pretty good job of implementing it and then allowing a 6-month moratorium to finalize the policy and get additional feedback. And they've had it since 2018, and just this last May, Oasis Fresh Market opened in that North Tulsa neighborhood, and it's the first full-service grocery store they've had in a decade. So that points to some good evidence that particular policy is working. So we highlighted those 4. And we'd be happy to answer any additional questions, but they're detailed in the report. Okay, so the final piece that we want to share with you are some thoughts and recommendations about how you could move forward with both the food plan and the findings of this study and this report. So we looked at the food plan, we looked at your past memos, we looked at current data on food insecurity, we looked at the 2 proposals that our team analyzed and tried to come up with, if we were sitting in your shoes, what would we do and how would we help address food access in the city of Wichita? So recommendation number 1 is to adopt the recently presented City of Wichita Sedgwick County Master Food Plan. Recommendation number 2 is to leverage these lessons learned from the peer cities that have gone before you and create a healthy corner store pilot program. We're suggesting start out in one of the city's low-income, low-access neighborhoods and then expand it after evaluating its success. And then our 3rd recommendation is, given the availability of ARPA dollars and also in-state funding from the Kansas Healthy Food Initiative, we have some recommendations for you about how you could fund this pilot program. So I have 1 slide on each of the recommendations, and then we'd be happy to take questions. So the first recommendation, the thing I want to point out is, as you all know, the Master Food Plan was informed by thousands of residents. There was considerable citizen input. And one of the pieces that we facilitated was, once we had the list of objectives and action steps, we went back to the community, to the folks who took the survey, who participated in the roundtable discussions, and asked them to prioritize the action steps. So as you can see, objective number 1 in the Wichita-Sedgwick County Master Food Plan was to address the 44 square miles of the city that are considered food deserts. And then the action steps that you see below in bullets are prioritized by the community. And as you can see, number 1 was to work with existing small grocers and convenience stores to incentivize and enable them to stock fresh, healthy food options. I also want to call out that there was interest in supporting the expansion of existing mobile market efforts in low-access neighborhoods. The second recommendation was to leverage the lessons learned from the peer cities and create this Healthy Corner Store pilot program. So we have 5 steps that we'd be happy to go through with you, but I just want to point out that the ones that are done very well obviously have a lot of stakeholder input. They hear directly from the convenience store owners about how this will work, about what support they need. And I would point out that another recommendation in the food plan was to create a food policy council. This could be a great project for a nascent food policy council to dig in, to research the Healthy Corner Store initiative, and to help shape how it could be implemented in the city of Wichita. We would also recommend, because there are organizations that have considerable expertise on launching a Healthy Corner Store initiative, we would encourage you to contract with food system and program consultants to advise on how the program is designed and implemented, to support your staff and stakeholders as they envision the program. We also would encourage you to issue an RFP for local food distributors, for instance, common ground producers and growers, to ensure that the corner store owners and bodega owners can access local food, right? The win-win of this would be if folks have access to, fresh, healthy food, and also it's grown locally so that it can have that local economic multiplier. And so I think that's an important role that the city could help support. Also, potential use of ARPA dollars could be to establish a mini grant program to support the infrastructure needed to make the program successful. And then we would definitely encourage evaluating the pilot project after 12 months to ensure that it's working, to see what tweaks might need to be made for expansion throughout the city. And the third recommendation is around funding. So we've just highlighted a couple areas that ARPA funds could be leveraged to support. So consulting fees, mini grants, and program evaluation. But also the Kansas Healthy Food Initiative, which is a partnership between K-State and the Kansas Health Foundation and the Food Trust and several other partners, is actually a healthy food financing program specific to the state of Kansas. And they support technical assistance and grants and loans for healthy food access projects in Kansas. So in addition to the federal funds, there are also in-state resources. So at this point, we would love to have a discussion, open the floor for questions, and see if there's any additional clarification we can provide.
Councilmember Clayco.
Thank you. Thanks to New Venture Advisors. I really appreciate your experience and expertise in this area. It's really important. I have a question. I think this is a really good plan. I like the way that it's laid out. My concern is that when we get to the end of the 12 months pilot and we've funded this with ARPA and Kansas Healthy Food Initiatives, are there ways to make this sustainable? I'm looking at the Philadelphia plan, and I understand there was a nonprofit created, and perhaps that's the way to do it. But could you talk a little bit about that, about sustainability?
Sure. I think one of the key, as you pointed out, one of the key considerations is that initial startup, right? So there will be city staff time and dollars spent to support the implementation of the program, to potentially fund produce coolers, refrigeration, freezer units, et cetera, to make this more possible for those stores. But there will be an ongoing support likely needed from the city. And I think that's where potentially supporting a nonprofit partner to do the long-term work, or potentially applying for Kansas Healthy Food Initiative dollars after the ARPA dollars. I think there are ways that the city could fund this ongoing, but you're right. It is a program that the city would initiate, and financial sustainability would be really important.
I'd like to jump in if I could make a comment to that, Councilmember. Thank you for being a good thinker, and you and I usually track when it comes to sustainability, but after we have some more robust discussion, I'm going to make a few recommendations. But I have said consistently throughout this process that in the RFP process where we, hopefully will get, that funds should not be utilized for staff or for food, because that would ensure sustainability. The other thing, we mentioned some state dollars, but then also if we were to establish a food policy committee or a food policy council, that opens the door for us to apply for federal funding from the Department of Agriculture and other things. So if we do this, in a kind of thoughtful way, not only will it be utilizing ARPA dollars, but then other funds could become available as well. And I don't want to steal your thunder.
The reason I like the corner store approach is that you are primarily buying capital, right, through your donations or through your allocation of ARPA funds, if that's the direction you go. And so then that gives them what's necessary for them to make it sustainable, especially if you go the direction Councilmember Tuttle was saying, and that you identify food sources, but you don't necessarily use ARPA dollars to buy food.
Okay, all right. And then I have a follow-up question. The case studies that are presented, I think except for maybe Tulsa, they all work through, and I understand this is cities, but they work through their health department. So have you seen examples or case studies where it's a city that doesn't control the health department being successful?
That's a good question. You're right. Most of the large metropolitan areas we looked at had city partnership or control of their health department as a city department. I'll have to think about that one and get back to you. But I think involvement of the Sedgwick County Health Department could be a really great partnership to leverage. In addition, because it would open up access to CDC funds and other federal grant sources that could help fund this over the long term.
So it doesn't sound like you think that that's necessarily a detriment that we don't control the health department, more as an opportunity to work with Sedgwick County.
And they've been at the table.
I think it's an opportunity for partnership. I think the reason we landed on this proposal and on this idea as well is it's really an opportunity for partnership on several scales for the city. So it's an opportunity to give a nascent food policy council a really great first project to get started on and a quick win. It's a great partnership opportunity with the Sedgwick County Health Department, and it's partnership with small business. It's saying, we hear you, we saw what happened to you during the pandemic. We think investing in the infrastructure of your business to support our community's food access needs is worthy of our attention. I mean, I think because of that, and because it's more carrot than stick, we really liked this potential fit for the city.
Thank you.
Okay, hi, thank you. So I'm very intrigued by the Baltimore model, the Baltimore virtual supermarket program, because I'm wondering about the trending. Some of these, we're a 3 grocery store town, and they're omnipotent, right? They control the market, they control the pricing. And I'm looking at the Healthy Core initiative. We've got the locations with our rec centers and our parks and our libraries. Wouldn't that be an easier route to get it up and running quickly if we partnered with one of these grocery chains like Baltimore did, to be able to get it, especially with the pricing being such an important part of the challenge here?
Mm-hmm. No, you raise a great point. I think the Baltimore market example, the reason it has not been replicated in other cities, and I would like to dig deeper and understand why, whereas the Healthy Corner Store initiative has been replicated in dozens of cities and has more research behind it to support that it does increase access to healthy food and actually changes people's eating behaviors and introduces more healthy foods into people's diets, which is the ultimate goal, right, to improve community health as well, not just access to any food, but access to healthy food. So that's why our bias was toward the Healthy Corner Store initiative. But I do think, I mean, if Dillon's or other major operators were interested, it could be a really interesting piece of the solution. I think The other piece of infrastructure that you all have is you have corner stores, convenience stores, bodegas, quick trips. You have that infrastructure as well. And, partnering with them could be another potential solution. So really, I think the Baltimore Market one is worthy of consideration, but we landed on the Healthy Corner Store initiative because there's just more research to support its efficacy.
So were there any conversations with any of our local grocery chains if they were in process or thinking about this type of service delivery model? Because, we see all the grab and goes now where you pull up and your order's placed in your car. Obviously, transportation being an issue, I think that's the next step for those companies, taking it directly to the consumer. But to that end, did we have any conversations with our local power brokers?
That wasn't in our scope, but
Okay.
I think that is a really logical next step would be
Okay.
to sit down with both groups of stakeholders, the large supermarket operators, but also some convenience store operators to understand what their interest level is, what barriers might be for them, and have additional conversations. And we'd be happy to partner in that additional research.
And if I could jump in, Councilmember Fry, if that's okay. We gave Eileen and her team a scope of work because we were trying to save resources as much as we can. But I've had several conversations with Dillon's, also the Kansas Food Bank, which isn't a traditional food supplier, but in the case of food insecurity and food deserts, it is. Also conversations with Salvation Army, who also provides food, so and several food pantries and other resources. So. And the Food Policy Committee and the Health and Wellness Coalition have had those ongoing conversations. So that's why I'm excited about this process, is if we I hope will move forward and consider an RFP process, organizations can apply and present us with ideas. So
Right, it
Bob.
doesn't have to be mutually exclusive.
Right.
You don't have to just go to the corner store.
Right.
It's more the ability to administer the program, right? So the broader we get, the little harder it's going to be for us to manage it.
Kind of a guiding principles is what I was thinking of these, not have to follow the model.
I think one of the strengths of what's just been presented to you is we now have an evaluation process with metrics that allow us to score every project that's submitted, and the criteria are pretty extensive. And so that issue of sustainability is important, and again, location and everything else that was shown on their in their presentation. And we do have a nice, robust spreadsheet that allows us to evaluate.
I'm so excited.
So I also like the Healthy Corner Store initiative. To me, it does sound real similar to that District 1 bodega. I am curious about the scores, though. So the Common Ground Growers and Producers not only was mobile only, but they also proposed brick and mortar. And then the District 1 bodega proposed delivery services as well. So it wasn't just come to the store, they both would be delivering and both have brick and mortar. Was that taken into consideration?
Do you mind repeating your question? I don't know if you heard it all, Melissa. Did you hear it all?
I
Okay.
didn't.
So
And
the-
if you could repeat it, that would be great.
Yeah, the District 1 bodega proposal, that operator actually would deliver as well. And then for Common Ground, it was not mobile only, although they delivered at 33 sites in 3 counties. They also had proposed brick and mortar as well. And I believe they have a grant for 2 additional vans to deliver. So both of those had both brick and mortar and delivery. Was that part of the scoring?
It was. I think when we looked at location, we looked at kind of that flexibility of brick and mortar only, mobile only, or some combination of the two. I think when we thought about, scale, we looked at not only can you continue to add vehicles for more deliveries, but can you actually expand your footprint via brick and mortar, or can you use some partnerships that are already in place to help with the reach as well? So I think, looking at kind of more of a mobile first model with a more bodega or store type model, both lend themselves to the potential for scale. I think it comes down to, potentially speed or, piloting and testing. Things like a mobile, if you're really into the mobile space, you can test, whether or not you're reaching the right people very quickly. You can make pivots more quickly, and then you can, while you're going along, you can also think about an expansion plan that might not be as costly and one that you can do more quickly. So long answer to say we did consider, kind of the benefits of mobile versus like traditional brick and mortar, as well as kind of a combination of the two. I think, partnerships, ability to scale are key considerations for both models. And I think when we looked at location, we also thought about ability to scale and time to scale as well.
Melissa, based on our discussions, the scores are also reflective of the lack of information from both proposals, right? District 1 Grocery is from a novice in this space. Common Ground has been in this space for a period of time, but there was questions regarding the expectations for the purchase of food and how much of their proposal was reliant on that, as well as some administrative expenses. But those are some of the questions that were outlined by the group for us and for future due diligence if we were to move forward.
The other thing, I didn't see that in your recommendation, but I would definitely recommend following Tulsa on the dollar store ordinance. We have, as you showed in your map, an overabundance of those dollar type stores in lower income areas in the core of the city. And those, to me, from research I've looked at, have shown to limit grocery opportunities. And what you put in here in regard to the Oasis Fresh Market opening after this ordinance was implemented, to me, kind of says we should be strongly considering that as well. In addition, the Oasis reached out to me through someone else and was interested in potentially locating to Wichita. But I think about how many of these dollar type stores are around and the competition that they would have just selling the same thing, but they have the good stuff as far as produce and meats, and the dollar type stores don't.
Vice Mayor, could I address that real quickly? I think that one of the things that I want to be cognizant and aware of when we're looking at these models, as I said, we kind of used them as guiding principles, but as I mentioned, and Eileen mentioned it too, there's kind of three things we're thinking with this today, like obviously the RFP process and, some maybe discussion. I'm going to make a recommendation here in a little bit of some funding, but then also the passage of the master food plan. And then what's really vital for the comments that you made is the establishment of a food policy council, who then can really dig deeper and look into that. So if we're thinking about potential ordinances within the city, we'd want to have robust community discussion and engagement and be able to move forward. So I think the establishment of a publicly appointed food policy committee could really start looking into that and see what the community's appetite is for something like that. So good
One
points.
of the reasons that I was supportive of what's coming forward in the recommendation is what I think Eileen mentioned, and that was the creation of it. There's an infrastructure in place right now. Mm-hmm. So you could either go the regulatory route and you try to limit the number of dollar stores that will be added to the system in the future, or what you do is you look at them as assets and then you use these dollars to incentivize them so they are actually involved in the live or in the produce business and providing and taking advantage of their locations, since they are so prevalent throughout the ECA as well as in the food desert areas. Why not try to incentivize them to remedy the problem? And if we can provide the right kind of produce provider as well as some capital to get them into this space, it has worked in other places, and that to me was the quicker hit. What you're talking about is a longer term pull, and I think I felt some pressure for us to try to address this in certain areas in the community especially.
So for me, I think it could be a both and approach. We've got probably 100 or so right now. So we can work with what we have while also looking at limiting what comes in the future. I don't have anybody reaching out to me excited when a dollar store opens. When that Family Dollar opened in the old Boys and Girls Club, outrage. I think one person was happy and they were getting a job. Everyone else was like, why do we keep having these dollar stores and they aren't supplying the produce? So the 100 or so we have now, I think it'd be good to try to work with them. But I will also say, hopefully everyone else has better luck talking to them than I did. Corporate never cared when I would call and talk about the concerns and issues of dollar stores. When we had, I forget the one in Valley Center, which one of those it was that actually had produce, couldn't get a return call when I said, hey, instead of opening all these new things with chips and soda, what about doing that same thing here in the city of Wichita? No return phone calls. I even went to the stores and had the general manager calling corporate. No response. There seemed to be no concern there. So hopefully someone else has a better experience than I did. But up until then, I don't think we need any more in lower income areas. There's enough. You can walk to those better than you can walk to grocery stores right now. So hopefully they'll participate and come into that. But I do think we should strongly consider some form of limitation on geography of these dollar type stores.
I have another question. I don't remember from the Food Master System, the Food Policy Council, is that the one that's recommended to be a joint appointments by city and county, right?
It is, yes.
Okay.
What would be the timeline on when that would come back to council for potential approval of the master plan?
Well, if the council wants to adopt that first recommendation or direct us in that, move us in that direction, what I'll do is reach out to the county to see, it'd be nice to coordinate the approval by the commission and council. So I'd reach out to the county manager about timing. I don't know that there's anything that would keep us on this side of the street from adopting it in December, but I don't want to get too far ahead of the commission in that regard. But if we can coordinate it and get it done in the next 30 days, you've heard it already, and I haven't had any direction to make any changes, so that would be the first step. And then the question is how that group then will help us move forward with this so that we can get ultimately an RFP on the street and define what the scope would be of that.
Okay. Do you think, and I'm only asking because that conversation we had with Senator Moran's team I thought was very beneficial, but everything was 2022 funding potentially federally, and the Food Policy Council was mentioned. So do you think working with the county we could have something approved and the council appointed and they could get some stuff together for the senator to try to help us with next year?
Right.
Yeah, that would be cool. So I'm gonna, I know this is just an informal workshop, but I've talked with folks that we've been working with, Eileen and her team, and with the city manager. But with our ARPA funding, there's 4 buckets that we've kind of determined, and 3 of the buckets we have designated. One bucket is not designated at this point, and so I would like the council to consider not only passing the master food plan along with the county and then the next step of the publicly appointed Food Policy Council, but also to consider that when we're looking at that undesignated bucket of $5 million, that $2.5 million of it be allocated for this RFP process for sustainable projects to help address food insecurity and food deserts in the community. And that would allow organizations in the community to apply, and that they could be reviewed in a transparent process from people who understand the issue of food insecurity and food deserts. We had 2 groups that came to us and asked for funding, and that was great, and I appreciate their effort, but other organizations have ideas and ways to solve these problems, but they didn't even know or think to come to us. So it would just provide a level of transparency and consistency that I think we are all striving for. Also, I think that it would ensure, I know some of council members have issues of geography and making sure, as we mentioned, that there are food deserts in every aspect in every one of our districts, some more significant than others. So making sure that if we have a group that's reviewing it, geography could be considered in part of the criteria, so that we're not just allocating funds to one specific district, so that it could be more equitably shared across the city to address the food desert issue. So as I mentioned too, one of the requests that I would just have is that no funds are used for food or staff, just to ensure sustainability. So that's just something that I'd like you to consider as a council.
I support that. I think the number is right at 2.5 million. I think your points about sustainability make sense as well. I would just hope also that our RFP includes some incentivizing for additional outside funds to stretch our dollars even further. I think that could be a big benefit, and I know that there's organizations in the city interested in helping too, so that might make us get way more impact with 2.5 million.
So, and I'll add, just, can we get staff to look into possibly how other cities, Councilmember Clayco mentioned some models utilize and create a nonprofit. So can we look into other structures? I think that this 2.5 million would be really good to organizations that are already working in this space, but also is there, I guess, startup money that we could be utilizing for a nonprofit while reaching out to the private sector in hopes of partnering with them so that we can have continuous sustainability of programs moving forward. I'd love to know what has been working in other similar cities and what hasn't.
We can, Mayor, great point, and we can start that research. I think that's where the Food Policy Council really comes into play, right? And it will leverage their expertise to help us in the discussion and design of that. But we can start with some initial work in that regard of what other cities are doing.
Just have a couple comments here. You know, I see there's a lot of different metrics up there. The two that stand out the most to me are how many people are in the area of the food desert and the income levels. And I have the geographic concerns, and I see a lot of South Wichita on there, and I really want to make sure that it's something that can serve the most amount of people that need the assistance.
I agree. I think it's great comments.
And we may have some other mechanisms to help in that regard by looking at census tract data, and maybe we'll come back with a preference towards targeted areas. That's what we're going to be doing with affordable housing, and some areas that are identified that makes even a stronger case for ARPA, the use of ARPA dollars when we're in those types of census tracts that deal with the demographic information you're talking about.
And just clarification, because I think it's a really good idea. You would be presenting almost a tiered approach, where first tier, we could say, because the numbers, these are the most affected food deserts, and we should address those first, and then the second tier approach. Is that what we're thinking about when it comes to analysis, to try to target the most severe areas of our city, make sure that we target those first, and then maybe a secondary tier system as well, almost like a scoring system? Is that what we're visioning here?
Not sure we're there yet. What I think we're going to take this in steps. The first step is approve the master plan, right? The master food plan. Second step then is to get the guidelines in place, similar to what we're doing for the other 3 buckets for the council, and then bring that back and let you determine whether or not you want to give special treatment or preference in the scoring for certain census tracts or looking at certain demographics that have especially been hit hard by the pandemic, and where we see a concern in terms of, because there's a significant amount of food desert areas, right? I mean, so it's a matter of how do we then, as you said, if you want to do it in tier, think through it in tier approach, food desert first, narrow it down possibly based on income levels or districts that have been especially impacted by the pandemic, which the census, we've got a federal designation of those census tracts already, so we could superimpose the 2 maps.
Yeah, and I'm only chiming in. I agree with Councilmember Bluebog about ensuring that we look at the entire city, and I just want to make sure that we make a take a data-centered approach to this policy, so that we're helping the most people possible in the areas that need it the most. So I would love some type of mechanism that takes any of our own personal biases out and lets us focus on the data on where we can reach people the most and help people the most.
I'll just chime in again. I would love to see movement on dollar-type stores.
Duly noted.
Has anybody looked into liquor stores as possibly expanding into, or creating a mechanism so they could expand into selling fresh produce? I know that other states have done this as well, where liquor stores usually have only a percentage that they can earn from stuff that is not liquor, but when they carry food or they carry fresh produce, there's been legislative efforts to make it so that doesn't count against that percentage of items that they sell. Is there, I guess at all, and Ms. Horn, you might be the one to chime in on this with your experience, both in the legislature but also in this space. Has any thought gone into kind of a expansion of small liquor stores into more of a convenience store where they focus on fresh food?
That didn't surface in the research, but I think that's a really interesting question. And I think you're right, would probably require some research into the state statutes about what's currently allowable. But that's a good thought.
I mean, you're already seeing it you're already seeing it in some of the free market solutions. Quick Trip and Quick Shop both now carry produce and meat and bread. Maybe not at the level that a bodega or a grocery store would, but you're seeing them respond to it at a level that they didn't used to. And maybe those Dollar Generals and those, maybe the experience hasn't been there like you experienced, Vice Mayor, but I think the market will dictate that. And just like you're saying, Quick Trip and Quick Shop do it, and liquor stores, they might as well too, so.
And my thought with liquor stores was because of Vice Mayor's comments about talking to owners of dollar stores or these national franchises, it might be tougher to get an audience with someone who's a decision maker. Liquor stores are all small businesses in the state of Kansas. They're all locally owned. So getting in front of folks who might be interested in expanding, if we could work it out, I think we just want to increase access to healthy foods, so that if we're having issues reaching out to the big, franchise stores, if we go towards the mom and pops businesses, would we have more success? So that's more of my inquiry.
Yeah, I guess maybe that was in one of the plans and I missed it, but I mean, maybe some of the dollars would be better well served if we incentivize some of the businesses that, that's low-hanging fruit to me. If we've already got the businesses out there and we can get them to expand on their services, maybe the Dollar General or something doesn't have produce, but if we incentivize getting the coolers or whatever the bottleneck is, if it's cost prohibitive for them to buy that, maybe we can help them out with that to get them to start putting more fruits and vegetables out there.
I'd just like to make a few closing comments, if that's okay. I'd really like to thank staff. I know Bob and I have spent a lot of time working on this. Dante's been involved with it. Some of the fellows have been as well. And also new venture advisors. Eileen and her team has been fantastic to work with. But this work, the genesis of this was the Health and Wellness Coalition of Wichita and the Food Policy Council. And their vision and their community efforts have led to this body of work now, and I'm quite proud of the community partners that have been engaged in making this come to fruition. So looking forward to maybe more good news in December as we proceed with this, but just kudos to community partners who see a need and take the time and energy to help come up with a solution with the city. So thank you to everyone involved.
So I just have a technical question, and maybe either member of council or Bob or legal can help me with this. My understanding is if I'm growing vegetables in my backyard and I have too many, which one or two vegetables, if I wanted to put a stand out in my front yard with little bags of beans or whatever and says, can that says 50 cents, our ordinance doesn't allow me to do that. And I'm wondering, if, and I think most people don't know that you can't do that. What would be is there any unintended consequences if we strike that part of the ordinance? Could we strike that ordinance and try to encourage more people to, share food that's locally grown within their neighborhoods?
So one of the things that we've done in the process of getting to the point of developing the master food plan is that we had city legal and county legal, and this is before I was even on council, pull all of the ordinances for the city and resolutions for the county that address food in some capacity. I think, Dante, you were involved in that process as well. And so our goal would be that when the Food Policy Council is established, that they would review those ordinances and resolutions and look for, what potentially needs to be eliminated, what potentially needs to be modified, and what potentially needs to be able to be developed to make sure that we don't have unintended consequences from what we have out there so that people can have access to food. So there's quite a few ordinances and quite a few resolutions that address food, and so all of those will be reviewed by that community organization that's publicly appointed.
Yeah, they're specifically discussed in the master food plan with the idea that we should make those.
We should strike that. Yeah. Okay.
And I think that would be a really good idea to use the experience and expertise of the people that are appointed to this food policy group, that they actually look at those instead of us, ones and twos here and there.
Content experts.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks.
Well, in that case, can I go ahead and get staff to do an analysis on if any comparable cities have similar ordinances, just so we, as the, this group gets together and does that, I would like to do my own homework to know what is the subjectable standard of those type of ordinances in cities such as ours.
Yeah, I think that work has already been done.
It's already been done. It's part of the food plan.
So I can do it, you guys can give me an analysis based off previous work on how many other comparable cities have a ordinance that prevents people from selling their what they grow in their backyard.
That's one of the ordinances that address food. We can, sure.
Okay, so by today I can get a analysis comparing, contrasting Wichita to Tulsa to Kansas City to other areas on who has this ordinance. Awesome. I look forward to reading that then.
I'll just chime in. I don't disagree with what Councilmember Fry said. I just didn't have a good experience trying to see if they would come to the table. If the dollar type stores do come to the table and can work out an opportunity for fresh produce, I don't have a problem with that. I just haven't seen it. And they find the spaces in the community already zoned to pop up in, and then we find out when we see a sign or someone calls us about it. So that's just been my frustration with it.
Well, and I'm not suggesting we do this, but it is interesting that Tulsa did a 6-month, I think it was, moratorium, and that does give you time to kind of evaluate things to see, again, I'd have to think that through to see if that really would work, but I think that's an interesting way to get a handle on what's going on.
Yeah, I agree. I just don't know if it works here. So just my experience with the Family Dollar on 21st and Grove, that building, so whoever owned it started demoing the building without getting a city permit. Found out when I called MAPD about it. So they stopped it. When I asked them what they were doing, they didn't tell me. It wasn't until another construction crew was out there and that wall had been put up on the east side, and the paint started going on the building, that I caught someone who just said, oh, this is gonna be a dollar store. So the city, I don't think ever knew, even with that permit, I don't think they have to say what they're doing, they're just saying the demo part of it. And I found out from there, and then I met the store manager after it was opened. And I think I was actually the one that told everybody it was gonna be a Family Dollar, but someone else had heard the construction team as well. And I don't think we have a mechanism to make anybody tell us what they're doing when they go into a space, which is the frustration, I guess.
So we're just back to my question. If I want to compare and contrast the top 50 cities and their ordinances on if they prevent people from selling vegetables in their front yard, that work has already been done, and I can get that from you today.
No, I don't believe so. I don't think the top 50 cities, I'm not sure how deep they went in terms of what the comparable data is. That's why I've got to talk to Eileen, do you know?
We did peer cities,
So-
but not 50.
I think that preceded our engagement on the food plan. I can share my screen for a second and show you where it shows up in the food plan. Can you all see my screen?
Yeah.
So the third recommendation, or the third major goal in the food plan, was to increase local food production. And so objective 3 is all about looking at current city and county agriculture policies to clarify what's allowed. I think there was still some confusion about what's allowed for signage, on-farm sales or on-premise sales from homes and from home gardeners, urban fowl ordinances, et cetera. So that was a point in the food plan, and I think Councilmember Claycomb brought this up, but that kind of research is also really appropriate for a food policy council, because you can build wisdom and knowledge on the council as you're doing that work together and get a better policy recommendation out of it.
Well, I would also like to say ditto to Councilmember Tuttle and thank you for all the work and the presentation. This is, I think, a good point to be at right now, so looking forward to what comes next.
All right, is there further discussion or questions or? Well, Bob, is there anything else or?
Nope, Mayor, we're finished.
All right.
Thank you. I want to thank Eileen very much, and especially for sticking in, because I know she had schedule issues.
Thank you so much, Ms. Horn, and thank you to your team for all the work you've done.
Yeah, it's a pleasure working with you again.
All right, excellent. So with that, we will come back from recess, which means that we are back on in our official capacity as in a city council meeting. And as such, I will make the motion, or I move that the city council recess into executive session for 20 minutes to receive information on an offer of settlement on a civil case pursuant to KSA 754319B2 for legal consultation with the city attorney, which would be deemed privileged in an attorney-client relationship for pending litigation, legal advice. The executive session is required to protect attorney-client privilege and the public interest. So we will begin the 20-minute recess, the 20-minute executive session at 11:40. It will last 20 minutes, and then we will reconvene in here. So,
We're going to start at 11:40?
We'll start at 11:40?
excuse me, I mean 11:20, sorry.
Okay.
Yeah, no. Exactly, and it gets time for people to get out of the room. So you got a few minutes, sorry for that, thank you for catching that. So with that, that is my motion.
Second.
Motion is seconded by Vice Mayor Johnson. All in favor of said motion, please respond by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. The ayes do have it. We will be in executive session in about 3 minutes.
In here.